Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it unacceptable.
Oh my goodness. Hey, welcome to DonnyBash 2018. A great crowd here at the Sheldon for this our annual fundraiser for the 9 Network. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as they do week in, week out. Let's meet the panelists assembled around the somewhat green table on this edition, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. Along with one of our Donnybrook founders from the Post-Dispatch, Mr. Bill McClellan. Over here to my left, actually to the far left, ladies and gentlemen, another one of our founders from St. Louis Magazine, Ray Hartmann. And from STLMag.com, the St. Louis American, and Mr. Kirkwood, Alvin Reid. Well, it's been especially tough, Bill, because it's such a slow news week. Now, of course, the hearings today in Washington, D.C., the Brett Kavanaugh hearings for the Supreme Court. Wow. Very fiery, very powerful testimony today, and for all I know, it's still going on. But do you think they'll actually have some ramifications for the Missouri races for the re-election of Claire McCaskill or Ann Wagner or anybody else?
Well, I don't think much for Claire McCaskill and Josh Hawley. I think that the Josh Hawley people are Trump people, and I don't think this is going to affect that race much. But maybe the Ann Wagner race, just because, you know, the meetings I've been to for Ann Wagner in the past, you know, she appeals to the suburban woman, sort of conservative, who are Republicans in the old-fashioned way, you know, pro-business, small government. And I think if the Republicans push Brett Kavanaugh through, which I suspect they will, and I thought that the accuser was very impressive and very credible today, I think that there might be some suburban women who are a little bit taken aback, and that could hurt Ann Wagner, I think.
See, I do think it could be an issue for Claire McCaskill only because Claire McCaskill has tried so very hard in a red state that still appears to be a red state. We don't know for how long. Then it will turn purple and then perhaps blue. But it has been important in this post-Trump universe for Claire McCaskill to paint herself in several newspaper articles, in town hall meetings, as somebody who does not align herself with the left-leaning liberals of Washington, D.C., even though Josh Hawley has, you know, he's based his entire campaign on depicting her that way. I do think it is going to, I think if she declared already, as she has, that she is going to vote against Kavanaugh, that might hurt her in ways that only she knows, because only she knows the numbers.
I don't think it will. I think Bill's right that actually, as somebody, I believe, Professor Ford, myself, but I think that there's a good chance that the Democrats will benefit in Missouri, and Court Van Ostrand will benefit if he is appointed to the Supreme Court. In other words, if they ram it through, and I think it's all going to come down to Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski and Senator Flake and Corker, and actually and then Manchin. Right now, they said 4 of them are meeting privately, not Corker, but the other 4 are actually meeting right now to talk about it. But I think that Claire will benefit and Court will benefit if he gets confirmed, because there's going to be an extra rage on the blue side. I want to say one thing. Today, really, as much as any day we've seen, it makes you sad about how this blue silo, red silo thing has torn this country apart.
Well, all right.
So if that's so, Ray, why were people so compelled to look at it? Okay. Now I think we all have our feelings about either person. Okay. But there's a grand theater being played out on Capitol Hill. All right. But the fact that people felt compelled to sit there and watch that hour after hour after hour, I'm sorry. Okay. But I don't really get that. Okay, and I know that it was emotional and it was this and it was that, all right? But we all know that when there's a TV camera on you, you act differently, you behave differently. I'm inclined, I believe her, okay? I believe the lady that testified today, all right? But how we do things in the United States of America...
I thought you said you didn't watch.
Right, I didn't. I'm just saying I've read. No. What I do is I read, okay?
Okay.
I will read tonight. I read every day. I still read the newspaper. Oh, I'm a dinosaur.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you,
Right.
Alvin. Right.
I
I believe Reid is your
Right,
name.
you know, I still read the newspaper. I still read stuff. I come to my own conclusions and opinions, and that's what it is. All right. There's this grand theater being played out, and this is not a shot at the President of the United States. This is not at all. Okay.
Go ahead.
But a lot of ways I say this that you can always preface stuff with. Listen, Donald Trump is President of the United States. The United States is wrapped up in some reality TV weird world that I want to step off of, okay? Yeah. And I did it today. But I'm going out of town tomorrow. I had errands to run.
Right, but the thing is, the stakes are so high, you know. It's not like it's not the Real Housewives of Washington, D.C.
Wait, the stakes are high.
Supreme Court.
The stakes are high, but like Bill said, okay. All right, like Bill said, how many of you think that he is not going to be a Supreme Court justice? How many? Okay? Now that's the minority. How many of you all think that he is going to be a Supreme Court justice? Now, that's the reality. People are off in this real world stuff and reality TV. Hey,
But Alvin, everybody in 1991, when Professor Anita Hill challenged justice to be Clarence Thomas, nobody got anything done at KMOX radio that day. Yeah. We were all glued to the television sets.
And rightfully so. I mean, we're told to follow civics, and this is civics, even though I agree it's highly dramatic. But when you watched her testimony this morning, you couldn't help but follow her every word. And then this afternoon with an impassioned plea, the likes of which we've never seen by the nominee, and then Senator Lindsey Graham with also another explosion, the likes of which we've never seen. I don't blame anybody for watching it thoroughly.
And let me say this. I think we are talking about possibly decades of jurisprudence being on the line.
You don't have to explain that to me.
I know. No, but that's why people are watching it.
I went to school. I know this.
We know that.
I'm saying that's why we're watching it, to see what happens, because I do think, I'm not explaining to you, I'm just saying the reason that people are riveted is it could come down. I think really that it wasn't just a question of who do you believe today, but I think we really saw in its rawest form and kind of like sausage being made, just in my bias, which I expressed last week about the guy.
Well, you're biased?
No, I said my bias is based on his judicial, record and stuff. But today he showed the opposite of judicial temperament that I think that may carry today. We'll see. I mean, he really did. I think that may carry.
For a while, I thought he was a Donnybrook panelist.
I tell you, we're never as uncivil as the senators on.
Well, I honestly think what happened was he kind of dialed it back during the Fox interview, and he didn't go over well. So he said, Donald Trump seems to be doing pretty well by, doing this, and that's why he came out swinging.
And that's interesting because Fox.
Or it could be that he believes he is the victim of character assassination, and he's tired of it.
Could be. The Fox interview, what bothered me, because you want to talk about local angle, the Fox interview, he did the same thing Eric Greitens did, and Anthony Weiner did, which is he gets on TV with his wife as a human shield. And that, to me,
Well, he's not
got
the
him
first
off.
one.
I
He's not the
cannot
first
stand when they do
know,
that.
And
Weiner did it.
And
Other
we
people
know
did.
that Democrats like Bill Clinton.
I said Anthony Weiner did it too. A
go.
lot of Democrats do it.
You know,
I just
look,
said.
hey, what can I tell you? It's a cold world, baby. You know, and it's like somebody woke up and said, like, hey, man, things aren't the way I think they should be. And they're losing their minds. Hey, welcome to Black World, okay? That's where I'm talking about. It's like you go through life and you say, like, hey, this doesn't really seem right, or this really doesn't seem fair. And everybody's like losing their minds and just like, hey, so we're gonna be, you wanna be everything they are because this might not go your way. I just don't get it.
I think
just
that,
don't
and
get
I
it.
understand exactly, I mean, I can't say I understand because I haven't been an African American, but I do understand what you're saying. What is particularly troublesome to me, and I think a lot of people on the left and the right, this has all sort of taken shape in the middle of this tsunami that has become the Me Too movement. And the Me Too movement is capable of literally making an allegation about somebody, and then you wake up the next day and they're gone. They're voted off the island. They have no recourse. But now we see that the Me Too movement is encroaching into those pre-young adult years. You have 17-year-olds. I believe that a prisoner, I believe that somebody who has actually taken the life of another, who goes to jail, can be redeemed. I believe in redemption. I would never want to be judged by the person, the embryo that I was at 17 years old. And I'm saying that everybody in this room should be alarmed by, if that's where we're headed, that Alvin, Reid, we're going to pull something out of our index
I'm with
card
you on
about
that.
you or you or you or
You
you.
don't think his yearbook is fair game?
Yeah,
Oh
no,
my
I'll tell you
God,
what,
no,
and that's
I
the
don't.
problem. His
Hello
I think
Kitty
if you
Death
wanna-
Diary.
If you don't want to go back to these 17, why don't you just go back 3 days? Because the Brett Kavanaugh story on Monday, which was this complete, he went total choir boy on an interview that he came on. You can't say you can't judge it because he went on Fox TV with a respected journalist to tell his story and make himself credible. So you're either going to believe him or not. It's not some intrusive thing. And he went on there with this choir boy thing, and the flack he started to get were from people like his college male roommate that were yelling, you know what, about all this choir boy thing that he did. And in fact, he was apparently quite into alcohol, which he seemed to admit 72 hours later. No, and I'm saying
In high school and college in America?
Excuse
Really?
me. The issue is you can't get to lie on Monday and then change it on Thursday.
Maybe
That's
why.
in 2018.
Maybe
He
that's
lies.
maybe.
I don't care about, he's a liar today. I don't care what he was when he was 17.
But
I will
if
say this.
Senator Feinstein had this allegation brought to her attention in July, and then today everybody's sitting on it, and then Your Honor, you need to ask for an FBI investigation. No, you have delayed this till the very last minute to completely blow up my nomination to try to stretch it out until the midterm elections. I just think there's enough stench
All
on
right,
every
here's the
side
deal,
of
guys,
this.
because we have a lot of topics tonight, and we did agree backstage that we would limit the time we would talk about this national story, however compelling it is, because there are other topics in St. Louis and our region that we want to get to. So we will have time for your questions later. Toward the end of the hour, we'll be taking those. But let's move on to another topic, which is, sometimes in St. Louis, if you stay around long enough, Ray, you tend to see these stories come up again and again, like now soccer might be a reality in St. Louis. Now, this is pretty exciting because the word is that the Taylor family, I think the richest family or the second richest family in Missouri, thanks to their great work with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they are the largest funders of the renovation of Forest Park, the Gateway Arch, many other things like the Soldiers Memorial in downtown St. Louis. The word is, and we don't have all the facts, that they're thinking about an overture to bring the MLS franchise to St. Louis. What do you think of that?
Let's hope they do it.
I agree.
Let's hope they do it.
What if there's public money involved when a city can't pick up its trash or fund enough police officers?
Let's hope they do it without public money. I am opposed to using any sales tax or property tax dollars. There are all kinds of economic development tools. Some of us don't like them less. I mean, I generally don't like. Oh, there's all kinds of TDD tax districts, and there's all kinds of brownfield credits and all kinds of programs that are in place. And yes, they're corporate welfare, but they're there for that purpose. And I said the last go around, these guys at the time should get as much as anybody else, but not a penny more out of existing economic development programs, whether you like those programs or not. Now, that's different, and they blew it with this sales tax nonsense the last time around. They cannot be coming to the taxpayers.
I agree.
But otherwise, I think we should get behind the effort.
Especially just to the city. You know, this last effort was only the city would pay. You know, this time, Mike Parsons, the governor, has indicated an interest in helping.
That'd be
and,
nice.
and the county ought to, if there's going to be public money involved, it shouldn't just be the poor city that can't afford to pick up its garbage.
Or St. Charles County can pay for it.
Remember, we went into an election where they said, like, the only way we're going to have a soccer team, MLS team, is if public money goes into it.
The only way you could pay it.
That's the only way. That's the only way it could
so-
happen. So who won that election? The people of the city of St. Louis who said no. All right, and there were all those there like, oh, the people in St. Louis are so stupid and all that. No, you read all that. Well, I guess they were a little smarter than they thought, because now here's somebody who could buy a family that could buy probably a National Football League team is going to pay. I won't call it chump change, because it ain't my money. But, oh yeah, they're going to shell out a little dough and we get a soccer team. And it's like, ooh, okay, great. Let's get a soccer team. But no, there's no way anybody in the city of St. Louis, county, state should give up any money
But you
for
are
it.
the
I
one,
agree.
you
I
are
agree.
the one who always says that we need to be more open-minded about this kind of thing. And I think in this regard, I think you're absolutely right. I think that after the Rams left, we felt like our longtime love left. I mean, that's the way my husband felt. His Sunday mistress, the Rams, that was a pretty big deal.
Listen, there's some people that still miss the Browns.
I know. So I think I think the last time they floated this idea, it was like, no, we just don't. I think now we're kind of open to the idea of soccer. And so I say bring it on.
I'm open to the idea. But
Yeah, as long as it's not
ain't
public,
paying
yeah.
for it.
No
I
tax
like the
dollars.
Reid plan, though, because, we've got bridges that are crumbling. We have trash is not being picked up. We have police officers that aren't hired, and the list goes on. And you just can't say with a straight face that soccer's the priority.
Well, what is the Reid plan, that the Taylor family pay for it?
Yes, yes.
But
I like that
plan,
plan.
but I don't know if the Taylors have signed off.
I don't think
Wait,
they have.
if the Reids had that much money and the Reids would say like, hey, we're
right.
interested in bringing
Well-
a soccer team here, you would expect the Reids to pay for it. Either shut my mouth.
Well, that's how it used to work back in the day, and then it's changed the last
And
30
nobody's
years.
been a better
All right.
corporate citizen than Andy Taylor.
And I like that the
I agree.
the sea lion thing that the
What?
Taylors pay for at the zoo. That's
Excellent.
I like that.
Oh, and so
Right.
many other things.
Right.
WashU, SLU, and beyond. Okay, I want to ask you, Alvin Reid, though, about St. Louis. I think we've got kind of a branding problem, because this week we actually beat out Detroit for the notorious distinction of being the most dangerous city in the United States. And it's kind of an issue. Louis Reid, no relation, who happens to be the president of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen, has come out with a plan based on a Harvard initiative in Boston that reduced gun violence there. I think that's a good start, don't you?
Yeah, I lived and worked in Michigan, just north of Detroit in Lansing, and I'd spent a lot of time in Detroit, and for us to surpass Detroit means that we got a big problem, folks. Now, we already knew that. I think the initiative that Louis is bringing forth could be okay, but look, I'm looking at Reid's track record, and the first thing I thought when I read that, was not that this is a good idea. It was like, who's getting paid? Who's in line to get some money? Who's going to get the contracts? Who's going to get this? Because it's thing after thing after thing where like, oh no, we don't move forward until my people are taken care of. Privatization of the airport, the whole soccer deal. All right, it's all like Louis Reid's little fingerprints are like, hey, people get paid on his behalf, kind of. And so I'm weary. I mean, I'm weary and leery.
Yeah,
We're
but he did come up with an initiative that seems to have worked elsewhere, maybe not in Chicago so much.
Right,
but-
I was going to say, they tried it in Chicago, and Chicago's having a mess. The city has in place already the best guy for public safety director, Jimmy Edwards. I mean, he's a legitimate guy, and he was a juvenile court judge, and way back in the 80s, I remember looking into a story about the guy who shot Roy Malone, a colleague of mine, and that's when I met Jimmy Edwards. He was a classmate of the guy who shot him. I mean, he's from the streets, and he knows these things, and I just give Jimmy Edwards more power. Whatever you need to do, Jimmy Edwards, do it.
But he's got to have the manpower. I mean, you've got to have police on the street, and we've joked about having police on the beat. I'm not sure where the beat would be anymore, but we do have to see, I think, more men and women.
Well, here's the deal.
more
Here's the
cars.
deal. In the city of St. Louis, for example, there are 140 officers short of a full complement, and frankly, they don't think they've got the pool of personnel in the city to actually hire enough. So I'm starting to think, have we discussed this before? That resident requirement for working as a police officer in the city of St.
But
Louis
we've been
should
saying
be
that for
abolished.
years. We've been saying that for years.
I was going to say, we better do something, okay? I mean, I don't care about the rankings and all this stuff.
I don't either.
The crime problem, it's long past the point of minimizing it or denying it. I don't know anything about, usually when we try to do best practice deals from other cities, they don't always work. But I'm not going to be against Lewis's. If he's trying to do something, let's at least look at, we really don't know the details. We have to address, first of all, we got to recognize we got a problem. We absolutely should get rid of the residency requirement, city should, right away, and try to figure out a way. I don't think the city-county merger specifically will solve it, but we better start thinking as a region about our regional problems, and number one is crime.
I agree.
9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 cities should not care about rankings. St. Louis should care about every ranking that comes out.
Right now, I think
because we ignore things, okay? And when we ignore
But
them,
we're baseball heaven.
yeah. Well,
Oh, we used to be.
Or are we? Alvin Reid. Ben Hartmann, outstanding writer for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Not the best, but
Outstanding.
nonetheless a great one. Wrote this week that he was curious as to why there were so many empty seats on this kind of like the crunch week where the Cardinals were up against the Milwaukee Brewers in a race, a series that really mattered for the wild card spot, if not, the pennant chase. Make a long story short, there were a lot of empty seats at Busch Stadium. I happen to think that, believe it or not, Cardinal fans have lives, and sometimes these games are running a little too late. What do you think?
well, there's a myriad of reasons, okay? My daughter and I went about 3 Fridays ago, bought the tickets on StubHub for about a third of the price that they were. Really good seats, and even with the markup and all that, still saved a lot of money. I was surprised by that. 2, I give Ben a lot of credit because Ben wrote down and put it out there what has been, you could visually see for the last 2 years. Those seats have been empty. All right, and you turn on Fox Sports and listen to them, and you think that there's 57,000 people in there, and you need a shoehorn to get in, and you're at the game, and you're looking around saying what? Right? So he just put it out there. I think in general, prices. I think hassle. Once again, I think the C word, crime.
Really?
I think there are a lot of you don't know how many people who have come up to me, and I might not agree with them. Who have said, I just don't go downtown anymore or go to the Cardinals game because I'm concerned about the crime. And they may be wrong. I may disagree with them. But if they're telling you this and they don't go, that's a reality.
Well, we did have this little detail of people being shot outside of Busch Stadium. I mean, it's not something we want to put in the tourist brochures. But, we are a great baseball town. There's no question about that. And St. Louisans probably love the Cardinals. The thing about the Cardinals that I think we underestimate, and it's one of the reasons that we really couldn't afford to support 3 full-time professional sports franchises, is the Cardinals have such a big footprint compared to the size of the market. The Cardinals do more revenue, or have at least, than the New York Mets, okay? And we're a little smaller in New York. And so, and so the Cardinals have always had an outsized presence, but you got to remember that they were on this amazing run from basically the late 90s with the steroid show through some really legitimately great teams through the 2013 season, I think, and there were times that we've gone through droughts, like in the 70s, when if the team has a sustained period that it isn't doing as well, the fans cool off a little. But let me tell you something. A lot of other markets our size would like 36,000 people.
I think what you're saying is right, and Hartmann pointed that out in the article about the Braves effect. I think that Cardinal fans are so spoiled by postseason participation that if it's a wild card run, it's like people aren't going to go to great lengths on a gloomy night.
Well, maybe so, but I think the C word is probably true, crime. I never thought I'd see it, but this week something very strange happened, and that was when Washington University, whose chancellor, Mark Reid, had been the chairman pushing the tax increase for Prop M for Metrolink a couple years ago, he was out on the stump trying to get the tax increase, and he was successful. WashU has at least 4 Metrolink stops, and he announced that the students who live near Del Mar, north and south of it, at WashU, will get 2 free Uber rides a day because of the concerns about crime. Now, when you got 18 to 22-year-olds eschewing mass transportation, you've got a crime issue in your city. I mean, there's just no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that, and if you're a black kid and catch the metro, you get arrested for stealing at the IHOP and you didn't do it. So maybe they need to.
oh no, that's another topic.
So you actually get perp walked back to the
right. You didn't get arrested, right?
Well,
fellas.
yeah. But no,
they were
I don't
carrying
have a problem.
IHOP bags,
Right.
so that's a
I don't
fact.
have a problem with him doing that. I think
All right.
the safety of your kids is the most important thing that you.
All right, Wendy, I want to ask you about the governor of Illinois, who's in a tight race for re-election against Bruce Pritzker?
J.B.
Pritzker, yeah. And it's Bruce Rauner, of course, who has come out for returning the death penalty to the land of Lincoln, which I think is kind of curious because it's in Evanston, Illinois, where they have the project, the Innocence Project, that has determined that many people on death row could not possibly be there thanks to DNA evidence. So I'm kind of surprised that Illinois, of all states, would go back to the death penalty. What do you think?
That's why they abolished it, because of the Innocence Project. It was either 2000 or 2002. It was George Ryan who abolished the death penalty. I think that Governor Rauner is 12 points behind J.B. Pritzker, and I think that he is looking for any kind. I mean, I think he's a pretty desperate politician, and I think he abandoned his promises to the pro-life voters who helped put him in office, and so now they have abandoned him, and so he is going for. He wants to be able to have the death penalty on the table for any criminal that kills a police officer, for example.
I think he's limited it to that, and I think he picked the wrong state to do that in. Illinois is a very blue state, and also the last I checked, the Innocence Project is still around because the problem. And I've circled the death penalty as I was before it and against it and for it and against it. But clearly we have seen with DNA testing over the last couple decades, just the shocking percentage of times that our system doesn't get it right. And when you execute the wrong person, not only is that the obvious tragedy, but then the real killer it becomes a cold case.
As a former resident of Illinois, the Illinois governors always want to abolish the white-collar penalties. I mean, because that's what they all go to prison.
Well, I was going to say,
it's crazy. I've changed. I witnessed 3 executions as a state's witness, and I've changed on it. I no longer am a death penalty advocate. So I think the governor is wrong. I don't know whether it's going to work or not for the governor, but I hope it doesn't.
Ray, you acknowledge that there are people on death row who have been convicted wrongly even after they've been out
ID'd by the victims.
That's why I say I'm against the death
Interesting.
penalty. I've said circled it.
Oh, so sometimes the victims can misidentify the perpetrator.
They sometimes make mistakes, victims.
Now, you're
Oh, you see,
making fun
talking-
of
we back to
death
that.
penalty here, Charlie.
No, I'm just pointing out that.
It's just a.
I don't think that happens. You know, there's something else happens, and sometimes people get too drunk to remember what they did. Okay. Okay.
You know, it's like, you know, I don't know how many of the viewers read the Evening World, you know, Ben
Yes.
Thomas's old paper.
Excellent paper.
But Ben used to quote homicide victims, you know, holy Moses, bring the roses sort of thing. So as far as homicide victims misidentifying their killers, that's a,
But
it's a good one, Charlie.
No, victims of serious crime do often.
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
He wasn't trying to be funny.
Well, I just think that with you know, when you're talking about like the death penalty, and you're still like, okay, if you kill a police officer, you get the death penalty, which is in some kind of, you know, crazed situation or whatever. But you're ignoring the fact of how many people get murdered in the state of Illinois, and little kids and all that, and maybe it's an accident, maybe it's not, and all that, and you're saying like, oh no, you, I'm not even pushing for you to get to death penalty,
Right.
and you killed everybody in the house, including two 6-year-olds.
right.
Fair point.
You know what is that about?
All
And
right.
by the way,
let's-
to Bill's point about Illinois having several governors, you know, ending up in prison, Missouri is behind, but we're catching up. I mean, we're catching up. We made some stuff, not in prison, but we're catching up with Illinois, so we're working on it.
Hey, Wendy, I want to ask you about the president of a university, Southeast Missouri State. His name is Carlos Vargas. You've heard the story? Well,
You were there.
yeah, well.
So was Brett Kavanaugh.
I think it was a tailgating situation where the president went up to a beer bong, and honestly, I didn't even know what a beer bong is, but I guess it's some device that conveys beer through a long tube into your mouth, and he took a sip or a swig of the beer from the beer bong, and he got in trouble, had to apologize. Do you think that he erred by drinking from the beer bong? He is 21 after all, and apparently beer is legal.
Well, the Board of Regents convened an emergency session, and they all agreed that it was a lapse in judgment. A lapse in judgment. I do think it was a lapse in judgment. I think that he probably saw the students. I can understand. You know, young people don't understand how very hard it is for those of us, and I'm not speaking to the young people in the crowd tonight, but those of us who are, I don't know, I'm over 30, you know.
Really?
So once you're over 30, you desperately want to feel like you're cool again. Bill is always cool. Bill will be cool. He'll be cool until he's 99 years
That
old.
is true. I thought
This is DonnyBash, and I have to admit I was at the wine bong earlier.
I know you were.
I was going to say
you were at the wine bong.
When I first heard he apologized, I thought they were going to
May I
apologize.
finish because you're
Oh,
at
I'm
the
sorry.
interruption
Oh,
bong where
excuse
you
me.
live. Okay.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Go
No.
ahead.
No, I'm just saying that I think he just wanted to be cool. I think there were a bunch of students around with their phones taking pictures and probably cheering him
did.
on. But I do think it was. I mean, when you think of what we're up against today in terms of opioid, methamphetamines, all sorts. I mean, heroin, alcoholism with kids and adults. I think he's got to set a higher standard.
Okay, double standard here, because I got no problem with what he did. Now, the same Board of Regents, he can host like a gathering for them,
Right.
drive there, drink a schooner full of scotch, drive home, and wouldn't nobody say anything. But he took a sip off the, oh my God, he hit the beer ball. Now, if he hit the,
I thought. Well, what?
now, that's purely for aesthetics, okay? And I have no problem with what he did. And you know what? Most college presidents couldn't name one student in their college, all right? And making $300,000, $400,000 a year. This guy's out in the middle of them. Okay, so he hit the beer bong. He ain't hit the bong. I mean,
No, I was gonna say, when I first heard he apologized, I thought he was apologizing to the owner of the bong for taking his beer. But no, I can understand where most college boards are going to think that's bad optics. But the other side of it is the students are going to probably think it's pretty cool. And I thought we had agreed to stick to you said we didn't want to talk about national stuff, and here we go with Brett Kavanaugh, beer bong.
okay,
Here we're back
yeah,
to Brett Kavanaugh. No, I think that, because underage drinking is a problem, as much as I can't believe I'm saying it, I understand why the Board of Regents
I'm with Alvin. Nothing wrong.
It didn't bother me.
I'm with Alvin too, and we'll just see how enrollment does next year.
It doesn't bother me.
If kids start applying to SEMO.
Wait a minute, I got
Alvin.
a senior in high school and she ain't going to school there.
Yeah, right.
At least you're honest.
I'm honest.
Okay.
That's what they're saying.
Alvin Reid, by the way, with us tonight is Steve Ellman, the county executive for St. Charles County, the public official brave enough to show up for DonnyBash. How about that? And let's talk about what's going on in St. Charles, Alvin, because on Main Street, they've decided, I guess because there's a lot of commotion associated with the bars and restaurants there, they're going to start a liquor commission, and city fathers and mothers, this is the city, not the county, have also decided that if you have an establishment serving alcohol on historic Main Street, 50% of your receipts will have to be food. And a lot of bar owners are saying, that's a standard that's too high, we'll probably go out of business. So, as we continue our alcohol theme here.
We always tell people to come to DonnyBash because we're having alcohol.
Yeah,
There we are.
yeah.
You know.
So, don't you think, don't you have a kind of a sensitivity for the little owner there, the small business owner who might get pushed out of business after being there many years?
No, I don't. Look, if your municipality deems, hey, it's a little out of control down here, and part of the problem is we're serving all this liquor and we're not serving any food, then I stand with the city fathers in that, look, we have to control what we consider to be like kind of a historic place, kind of I hate the term, family gathering place, but I can understand why they're doing that. And if they go out of business, the McClellan and Reid consulting firm will be there to find businesses to fill those empty shells of buildings.
I think it's terribly unfair.
Well, then you're fired.
I think if a bar is in existence, you just can't go up to the bar and say, hey, you're now a hamburger joint. I mean, it
agree.
It doesn't work.
I
should be grandfathered in.
But wait a minute. Wait.
Bill, first of all,
change rules. You can't fall on the quarterback anymore. Rules change,
Let
man.
me ask you this. If other cities can have Rush Street and Beale Street and they operate successfully and every city has one, why can't St. Charles have a successful
now wait a minute. That's
Main
not
Street?
No.
Come on.
let me say something.
First of all,
Bill's the only grandfather on the show, and so you're going to be for grandfather causes, I understand. But I salute my fellow founder here.
Thank you, Ray.
First of all, a little detail left out of the story is they've had this 50% rule and not enforced it. And it's very unfair to businesses that have invested and try to build their way up. And if you're going, as one of our, we have the opportunity to talk to our DonnyBash audience before the show, and I think it was Grant out there, whoever told me, made a good point that if you're going to have an entertainment district, if you're going to have a nightclub district, manage it right. Manage it like a nightclub district, and you don't need to be throwing people out of business.
I agree.
First of all,
because you just on a whim.
I love these stories because it gives us an opportunity to hear someone from Chicago say the word B-A-R. How do you say that word? How do you pronounce that word?
Oh, B-A? I thought you said B-R-A.
B-A-R.
It's a bar.
It's
a bar.
It's a bar. It's a bar.
You
It's a
go-
bar.
you go-
Okay, but
after
see,
work, you go to a bar.
but see, you guys, you're men, so you have overlooked the best part of this story. They want to put Old Town St. Charles and the bars in Old Town St. Charles on the Weight Watcher point system, okay? Because these bars get 6.5 points every 6 months. And if you have somebody who's sick in the street, that's 1.5 points. So that adds up against your point. I think it's utterly ridiculous when you are a business owner who has taken risk to be forced into this sort of commercial twister where, you know, you've got to hit all of these areas. It's like right foot on, you know, Bud Light, and then left foot on yellow with a tequila shot. But you shouldn't make it that difficult for businesses that have
If
invested.
downtown Kirkwood
You
got
just
out of
shouldn't.
control, we would have to take steps to get it back under control.
Oh,
But you
downtown Kirkwood's a
shouldn't-
good one, a good example.
Right,
Another
right,
great place.
right.
What's the food requirement in Kirkwood?
I don't know,
I
but
don't know.
there's
I
plenty
bet
of
it's not
food.
50.
Because you've never ordered food in one of those places.
I bet it's not 50%.
I've never thrown up on the street either.
Yeah, well, there's always a first for everything,
I bet
Alvin.
you anything
All
it's
right.
not 50%.
Al, going to move on to Bill. Bill, McKinley Heights has a resident who wants to put artificial turf where grass like fescue or Bermuda is usually grown. So this would be the plastic stuff, right? It looks pretty nice, but the powers that be do not want artificial turf on someone's front yard. If someone had a home next to you and wanted to put artificial turf on it, would you object?
Well, more to the point, if my next door neighbor, if I put artificial turf on, my next door neighbor would be happy. It'd be a big improvement. You know, we had it sprayed for weeds last year, and it turned out it was all weeds. I mean, I can't imagine anybody being upset about artificial turf. I mean, it looks sort of like grass. I'd be fine with it.
I think I have a more pressing question. Where is McKinley Heights? I don't even know where McKinley Heights is.
It's a little south of North McKinley Heights.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, my thing is like, all right, I'd have to go look at all the other ordinances because they're like, are they saying like you can't have AstroTurf, but you can have a '57 Chevy rusting out, you know, in your driveway? I'm with Bill. Fine, you know, so you have turf, right? And I'd put some pink flamingos out there at a windmill. I wouldn't put a jockey out there, but
That's good. That's good.
You know, I'm not kidding. My next door neighbor does have a
They got a
commode.
jockey?
No, a commode in the backyard. They had replaced it, you know.
did they put some flowers in it or something?
No, but it's
No,
an
but
issue.
it's not.
It's an issue.
Yeah.
But it is a planter. It's not a.
No, it's you know, they redesigned the restroom and the porcelain is in the backyard, but that's okay.
Yeah, right.
As long as no one uses it while
Well,
it's
I'm
in
just
the
hoping they're
backyard.
watching DonnyBash.
I would actually like to go on the record with what a lot of people in our audience would like me to do, which is no comment.
Oh! Hey!
Who cares?
We've been waiting 32 years for that. Okay, Ray Hartmann. No, I'm going to move back to you, Alvin. Six Flags St. Louis is giving away $300 to someone who can spend 30 hours in a coffin. This is going to be a week from Saturday, maybe 2 weeks from Saturday. Now, that comes out to $10 an hour, and as you know, that is not a living wage.
Oh, you see what he did there?
That was good.
No. I've been waiting all week to do that. So, what do you think? Is that in good taste?
Halloween 1977, Kirkwood High School. Kirkwood Call. Some geniuses decided to, like for $1, you could get your picture taken in a coffin in the library in the high school. I am not lying, okay? This story went national first in the Call, all right? And I will say that I thought it was tacky then, and I think it's tacky now. I'm not with it. I mean, I don't want to, like, the grandpa here, whatever. He's the grandpa. But I just can't, no, come on,
No.
Six
Oh, no,
Flags.
I disagree with you, Alvin. There was a time when I was 23 or 24 and didn't have any money. And the idea of picking up $300 by laying down. and there are drugs to help you if you're claustrophobic. And this deal that Six Flags is giving, you get to get out of the coffin every hour or so. I mean, unfortunately, I'm in a good position. I don't need $300 that bad right now. But there was a time when I would have been driving down there to get the Six Flags.
Well, is it open casket or closed casket? Do we know?
I'm sure it's open.
Oh,
No, I
well, then
think
I
it's-
might do it now.
No,
Jeez.
I'm pretty sure it's closed casket. I
it
don't
is?
know.
Forget
what's
it.
the
There's no
point?
way.
They let
What's
you
the
open
point
it
of
for a
putting-
beer bong every hour.
Wait,
Oh my gosh.
why they put that mirror on the top so you can look at yourself?
Hey, Ray, we've got about 3 minutes before we get to questions. And this week, St. Louis, the area, had another distinction which was not really laudable, and that is that we're near the top of the cities for people who are getting away from mass transit. Now, you're not really too crazy about these rankings, are you? I mean, do you read much into it?
Well, no, these aren't rankings. These are actually, genuine numbers.
From the Department of Transportation.
Right, but you do have to understand a lot of it's apples and oranges. If you compare, in other words, they're talking about the rate of decline of mass transit, which has happened, and without being defensive, when you're being compared to a city like New York or Chicago or Washington, whatever, where mass transit is a necessity, they're by definition not going to have as quick a decline as St. Louis, where it's more of a choice. And there's definitely the crime problem. We all know about that. There's the fact that Metrolink wasn't well designed, but this is not a reason to, and then there's also the Uber Lyft factor that's taken some business from mass transit among people that don't own cars. But let's not give up on Metrolink. Let's not give up on light rail, because it is environmentally and in terms of bringing us together, a community, still a worthy thing to keep expanding.
Agreed, and I will also say this. St. Louis would be like it would be an oddity in that we would probably be the only place in the world where if you actually made people pay to use something, ridership would go up. You know, because people would then say like,
They'd feel safe.
yeah, I feel safer.
Got it.
That's the first step that Metrolink needs to take. You still have to do it.
Now, here's
But
the truth.
I do think we
even New York had a decline in ridership. And I think it might be the Uber effect around the world, because it's cool to take Uber and all that. But I just don't see spending $750 million if your mass transit ridership has gone down 20% in the last couple of years.
Well, it will ultimately, we all talk about a future St. Louis that's going to be better, and we're going to be bigger, and we're going to start doing things right. We do have to look toward that horizon. We can't give up on that. And if you give up on mass transit, then you're giving up on what we could be in the future, and you can't do that.
And I do think, when Southern Living or Hospitality Weekly, or, they come out with the best cities in terms of exercising or bike paths, I think we have to start paying attention to just about, what everybody's saying about
Every
us.
ranking.
Yeah, I do.
If it's a legitimate source.
Well, yeah, not all
sure.
these.
Not
all these click.
No, I understand that.
Right, not Wallet Hub or whatever
But
it is.
nonetheless,
Okay. If it's,
we got to pay attention.
No, I think you're
okay,
right.
all right. This is the time in the program when we go to the questions from the audience, and if we can get those questions, that'd be great. Does anyone have those questions? Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, somebody in the back raised his hand.
This is so low tech.
This is the way to do it. Do you think Ben Franklin or Tom Jefferson would have passed today's interrogations? That from Mel Hussman of Pasadena Hills. In other words, who's our next saint? Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yes.
Talking about the
Right.
Senate hearings. Yeah.
I'm awake.
No, I know. Hey, is crime dooming St. Louis? Is it scaring off new businesses and young families?
I think let's snap our fingers here. One thing I'd say, we would have mass transit. If you could turn the city school district into one of the finest in the state, then people will move into the city and we'll figure out what to do with this crime if I could send my kids to public school.
But
That's true, but I think the city even now is attracting more and more young
They are.
families.
That is
You can look at the aldermen, they're younger and they're the progressives and they believe in city living.
And in fairness to the city, the crime problem is not limited to the city of St. Louis.
Right, that's true.
So, we have crime, as it's something that we have to come together as a region to talk about regionally. But, we shouldn't be giving up about it.
Here's a question the woman says she's been asking for 6 years. We've never answered it, and that is, if there's truth in advertising, why doesn't that apply to political advertising?
Well, I'll say.
Well, we were on the no-call list, and we're getting more calls than ever before. So I'm not sure there's any truth anywhere to be found anymore.
Honestly.
Honestly.
There is a First Amendment issue with determining who gets to say what truth is and what it isn't. And clearly the last thing we need to do, regardless of how this whole blue silo, red silo thing is tearing us apart, is to start censoring political speech.
Who was it said, with truth in politics, there's always more demand than supply?
Yeah.
Brett Wright of St. Louis City asks, after recent allegations in the media, how do you feel about the state of journalism?
Oh, I think it's actually, I think it's fine, okay? Journalism has always been what it is, and it still is to this day. There are things that there's programs I don't like, they're over the top, they're over this. But once again, people, I appeal to you. Read the newspaper, okay?
Thank you, Alvin.
All right.
Thank you, Alvin.
Because what people refuse to believe is that 90% of the news you hear on the radio are listened to and looked at on TV originated in a newspaper someplace. And that's just the reality of it. And somebody gets online and starts a blog and all that, that's fine.
Right.
Read
PBS.
newspaper.
Yes, and also watch,
may I also
and
say-
support Channel 9
Yes,
and watch PBS.
thank
No,
you.
but
And the
Alvin's
9
right.
Network.
Alvin's right, and let me tell you, we don't want to get national, but we really do have a problem when the President of the United States is denigrating and really stomping on the First Amendment by denigrating
But-
the
He
And some
watches
people, some
TV.
people would also say,
We do.
some people,
and on balance, the media is doing its job.
some people would also say that the information that was provided 3 or 4 months ago, that 88% of the media coverage of the White House was negative. So you
Maybe because it was-
yeah, that's fine.
because it's
That's
doing a
fine.
bad job.
But
All right, okay.
my problem, can I answer it? Everybody else did, or no? You want me to just sit here quietly?
No, we do have a time limit,
Oh,
so go
okay.
ahead.
No,
If you
go
can
ahead.
Wrap it up.
Go ahead.
How can we stop expired temporary license tags? That from Jim and Baldwin. It's an issue. We're working on it.
Don't they have a camera that does that now? Like they
No,
just flash?
well, actually, you're right.
Yeah.
And the governor's putting more of them in St. Louis, but he's not too aware, he told me, about expired tags.
Who
There
is
are
the governor?
Mike Parson.
I know.
And he's
Who is the mayor?
mayor?
Another show.
Oh. This question is for Bill McClellan. What will you do if the Cubs win another pennant or World Series? That from Lane Evans of Florissant.
Well, that's a very interesting question, Lane. I'll be taking a vacation with my wife. You know, last time in 2016, Cub fans spent $20,000 each on 2 tickets behind the dugout in Cleveland for the 7th game in the World Series. And I said to another Cub fan, I said, that's a lot of money even for a Cub fan. And he said, well, not if you amortize it over 100 years. We'll do something very special to celebrate another Cub fan.
We still could have a 1-game wild card playoff between the Cards and the
It could
Cubs
happen.
this year.
When they won the World
Maybe.
Series, the first thing I thought was Bill McClellan. I really did.
Yeah, I did too.
I said, like, I'll be damned. And then it was Bill McClellan.
Well, speaking of that, at my birthday party a year ago, Alvin gave me a Cub W flag.
A flag. And you
know,
couldn't
so-
get them. I mean, Chicago, every last one of them was gone. I had to scour all Chicago for my man
Oh,
here.
thank you, Alvin. Well, thank you for that question.
Okay, what are we going to do to make the crime train that is Metrolink safer? From Paul and Woody Woodard of St. John. How do you make it safer?
Let them have their own security police force and have a guy or a gal on every train. All right.
Maybe turnstiles?
Oh yeah, make people pay to get on. Right.
Yeah, you have to make people pay, but you have to make it safe for the people who are running Metrolink to be in the same room together. I mean, they have had bare knuckle brawls, and if they can't even figure out the best way to make it more safe and more
Well,
appealing.
the county council's putting pressure on them now.
They aren't being. They are
Well,
definitely.
One other point, and Alvin and I made this, I think, a week or two ago. First of all, let's stop calling it that names like the crime train, because it's not fair. The Metrolink is not, it's in itself a dangerous system to ride. And we've had a couple stories recently where something happened in the vicinity of Metrolink and they called it a Metrolink murder. I mean, Metrolink, let's not have a self-fulfilling prophecy. We all agree that crime's our biggest problem, but it is very unfair to Metrolink to act like it's such a dangerous thing to ride the train, because it's not. It really isn't.
Okay, thank you. Are there any topics that were so interesting and appealing that you were sorry to see them go? And if so, why? In other words,
Governor Eric Greitens, we miss you. I told the Democrats to keep him in office. We miss Eric Greitens so badly.
Hey,
I mean, just professionally speaking.
professionally
I mean,
speaking,
not
yeah.
just professionally.
Those of us that were working
You know,
freelance for
with
high-paying
such-
newspapers, we could have. I could have used another month of that.
I mean, the whole, we haven't talked about anybody's basement in months.
Well, maybe we should ask him to come back. Well, let's forget it.
oh, here's a good one from Michael Kleckner of Kirkwood. What do you think about the Kirkwood School District doing without class rank? They've decided they're not going to rank the graduates. Instead, you'll get summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or cum laude.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I give you some facts on this. One, Kirkwood and Lindbergh are the only two that still do it. Kirkwood, because of AP classes and all that, like you could get a 4.0 and be ranked like 75th in your class. All right, and they're not giving the grades away for free. So thus, there was no way to judge basically where are you at. Oh, and by the way, you got 3.6 and you're like 140th or whatever. And that's where it's coming from. But there are only two districts that still do it in Lindbergh, and we're going away from it, and we're not going away from it for about 4 years. So times change. I don't have a problem with it, but trust me, my rank was not there.
You were thank you, Lottie.
Thank you, Lottie. Right.
Thank you, Lottie.
well, but what if? Okay, one final question here. And I think we've got about 30 seconds. What if? Will the NFL ever come back to St. Louis?
Yes, it will. Ultimately, we will have a National Football League team.
No, it won't. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we have at this point, I don't think we have the economic structure to support
two-time
teams.
losers in the view of the NFL. I think everything. Things could happen. I believe in miracles
You
too.
don't go to prison until that third one. What is that?
That's
like
three strikes.
Three
That's
times,
right.
Three strikes.
Three strikes,
Yeah.
you're
We
out.
got another team out there
Sort of.
somewhere.
Like,
So,
let's go Blues.
Yeah, let's go Blues, go Cardinals. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's go 9 Network. Thanks for joining us for DonnyBash 2018. Have a great night. Thank you.
Well,
What a great crowd we had tonight. Yeah, really great crowd.